So good morning to all of you. This is session 3, so day 3 of the close reading training. I'm excited. You guys have been a great group. Continue to learn together and explore the different aspects of what close reading means and what it can look like for us and for our students in our classrooms. I'm going to switch over to the agenda, so I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And as always, you can either click the agenda and look at it yourself, or you can just follow along on the screen. It is entirely up to you. But we've gone through our first and second. Those of you who are new to us, you can look at our pre-recorded sessions, session 1 and session 2, to get yourself caught up. And where there's times where we're doing workshop activities, where there's kind of dead air and people are working on the screen, you could go ahead and fast forward those moments so that you can kind of get the conversation instead of watching people work. So there's some options there when you watch the recorded broadcast. So our agenda today is going to focus on student-centered reading experiences. Specifically, we're going to focus on one strategy called Read 1, Speak 2, Write 3. We're going to have an opportunity to look at comprehension reading skills, the ones that we offer at LiteracyTA, and then you're going to have a chance to do some reflection and some work on what skill do you think would be best for your kids and the needs that you have. And then we're going to start doing a lesson plan as our assignment, and we're going to go as far as we've learned. So we're going to deal with learning outcomes. We're going to look at prompts, writing a prompt for it, and then choosing a skill for step 2 and choosing a skill for step 3. And I'll walk you guys through all of that. So let's jump over to the slides for now, the presentation. And again, you guys can follow along by clicking on the Google Slides, or you can look at the screen. So this is session 3. And our outcomes, for the most part, are the same, at least for skill-based instruction. But instead of looking at step 1 and 2 in the reading process, we're going to go through step 3. And that's where we're going to be able to spend some time looking at Read 1, Speak 2, Write 3, and other comprehension reading skills. And then we have deepen understanding of how to engage students in collaborative reading experiences and talk about how important those experiences are. All right. So the first thing I wanted to do before I take a look at the work that you submitted is talk about why LiteracyTA is not one more thing. I understand as a teacher myself that we change so many different directions. Districts and schools go to conferences, they get inspired by a speaker, they'll come back, they'll read a book, they'll come back, and they'll want to do something. They'll want to make some change. Their vision will take on new meaning or have a new direction. And it's sometimes challenging for us as teachers to kind of follow along and adjust to the newest thing that our leaders have come across. And although all the things that they bring to us have the best intentions, sometimes they're different than what we were doing the year before. And teachers develop this idea that, great, this is just another thing we have to do. And it's just another expectation that's been put onto us or put on us. So I wanted to talk briefly about why LiteracyTA isn't one of those things. We're not a fad. We're not a movement. We're not a once a year and then get rid of us kind of thing. And here's some reasons why. So one of the things that we are and what we do is we reinforce skills across campus. So we're not for a certain group, we're not for a certain time, we're not for a certain part of the curriculum. We are across campus way of reading. We provide a common language. So often our teachers struggle with communicating across campus with the same kind of language and expectation. So I may say, you know, my marking is called, you know, what LiteracyTA calls it marking a text, and another school calls it sort of squiggle dot, or another department calls it squiggle dot. And then I've got another department that calls it slant and bolt, and you've got all these names, and sometimes they're silly. And the problem is that kids move from class to class, and they have to make some serious adjustments with what the skills are, how they're talked about, just because teachers are not on the same page. So what LiteracyTA does is provide a consistent language for schools. Thirdly, we complement all disciplinary reading tasks. So we don't tell you to read a certain type of text. We don't tell you to read the text that we have purchased from publishers. You can teach any text you want. We complement the reading that is happening. Textbook reading, and reading in anthologies, any of the work, we are a complement to that because we're a framework for reading. So it can go across any type of reading task that's assigned in your school. We provide best practices for instruction that are research-based. We offer classroom-ready activities, so you can jump in and start using something right away. You don't have to go through this methodology and use very specific, programs that are scripted, that tell you exactly what to do, when to do it. You just jump right in. There's a classroom activity, you can use it, and you can go. And then it delivers a school-wide mission and roadmap to success and achievement. LiteracyTA isn't one more thing because we're about literacy, and literacy isn't going to go away. It shows its head in different places like PBL, project-based learning, inquiry-based thinking, one-to-one initiatives. Literacy pops up in a lot of different ways, but the thing that is consistent is that we need to teach our kids to read, speak, and write about texts, no matter what we're doing, no matter what kind of new program we have or new machine or equipment we purchased. It's always going to be about improving students' reading, speaking, and writing, and I can include thinking skills. So LiteracyTA is that framework to do that. And I wanted to spend session 3 talking about this because I think it's too early to say those sorts of things with session 1 and session 2. But now you're starting to see the power of what we're trying to do at LiteracyTA, and I think that now you can kind of see, like, yeah, I get it. It does complement. It does give us a common language. There are practical activities we can use. And again, this isn't just something you do on a Friday or something that we're going to do for 2015, 2016, and then 2016, 2017 school year, we're going to do something else. Literacy should be at the forefront of everything that we do. So I just wanted to share that with you, and if you wanted to share this with your colleagues, it is a part of the presentation, and you may do so if you wish. All right, so I wanted to take a look at the work that you guys did from yesterday, and those of you who are new, it's okay. It's okay if you didn't do this work, but I wanted to take a look and ask a few questions and just kind of celebrate the work that was done. So there was a folder, a Google folder, that I had asked you to put your prompt work into. So I'm going to go ahead and follow that now from the presentation. And it's going to open up into, oh good, I'm glad Jennifer got everyone's in. Here's what I love about Google. I don't know if you guys have used Google with your students or not, but in this way. But you know, when you have a deadline, you can say, you know, I want it by this date, I want it by July 2nd, I want it by July 5th. I like to play with my students a little bit, make them feel a little bit more grown up, because by giving them a 12 o'clock deadline, so I say this assignment is due 12 a.m. on this date, and they kind of, I don't know what it is, but they like that the date isn't like in class. They like knowing that they have some extra time after school to get it done, and some of the kids just remember when they get to school, oh my gosh, I didn't do that assignment. So I give them this kind of fun deadline, the same kind of deadlines you get in college. And then Google puts a little timestamp on there. So I know exactly when individuals uploaded their work. So it's kind of fun, and they can see when they did it, and I can see when they've uploaded. So it's just a different way of motivating students. Okay, so I'm going to look at sorry, excuse me, we're going to look at Lillian's first. She put in a PDF, and the purpose of looking at this right now is simply just to celebrate the work that you guys have done, and then maybe ask a few questions. So the first step, of course, was to mark it the way, mark this prompt the way that you would want to mark it with your students or teach them how to mark it. And what I'm noticing is, if I can guess, it looks like Lillian was choosing to circle some of the content words, some of the nouns. So the problem, the cause, and the effects. And then there's a little bit of underlining with introduce, identify, summarize, and explain. So it looks like the decision was made to underline some of the verbs and then circle some of those common nouns that are important to the prompt. And so what I wanted you to do is mimic what the video was doing, what the coach in the video was doing, so that you can kind of see a comparison. And so Lillian did exactly that. And there's a couple of differences. One difference is that instead of underlining the verbs, the video is showing circling those verbs, which, you know, as a staff, it doesn't matter. Underline, circle, as long as it's consistent, it really doesn't matter what you do. But there is a major difference in that we ask students to number. We ask students to number the verbs in their prompts because it tells us, as a young writer or reader, it tells us what we're going to talk about first, second, and third. Sometimes in a prompt, those verbs are very clear in order, and other times the last verb in the prompt is the first thing you talk about. So it's not always going to be this straightforward where it's 1, 2, 3, 4. But getting into this routine and this habit of numbering your verbs will help you when you actually sit down to write. Okay, and then of course there's two other things: being able to write to an academic audience if there isn't one mentioned in the prompt, and then naming your source. So there's a couple of additions, if you will, to what Lillian did. And again, it's not about being right or wrong. What my goal for you in this work was to maybe pick up a few things that you're not doing, or just compare how you do it versus our process and see if there's any kind of marriage that you can find for the two of them. What sorts of things can you bring in that would help? And if you find numbering verbs as useful, then add that to what you're doing. And if you find mentioning an audience and a source is helpful, then of course add that. So that's this one. We're going to take a look at Jennifer's here. So it looks like Jennifer did the try it on your own and started to circle. It looks like circling the verbs. I think this one, though, that Jennifer's put up is the one from the video, but I could be mistaken, only because she has things numbered, but maybe she was numbering them already. So that's good. Jennifer, can you provide any clarification as to if this is your method or if this is part of the video?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay. I initially I did both the video and initially did my own here at the top. But because my scanner, I had an issue with my scanner, I just had to kind of replicate it on the computer. So I circled what the students were actually supposed to address in their writing. So first they had to address the problem, and then I went through the verbs. And I numbered them before seeing the video because there were so many things that they had to keep track of. I do have my students to kind of keep track of what their responsibility is as they begin their writing. So they can kind of just go through and check off, okay, I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here I saw that there were 7. And I apologize a little bit on the end. The explain should be circled as number 7.
Oh, yeah.
But I did notice, though, that I didn't hold them accountable to the identifying the source. And typically we talk about the audience, but I don't have them mention the audience just to know who the audience is, so I didn't write that down either. But that's pretty much the process I used.
Wonderful. This is great. Let me kind of plant this seed for you too. I love the numbering because it's like, wow, this is getting a little overwhelming. There's quite a bit here. Do you ever have them number for purposes of sequence as well? So would you have them maybe number, not in this prompt because that wouldn't make sense, but would you ever have it be problem is number 3, even though it's the first listed, explain is number 5, even though it's the second listed? Do you ever teach them how to number their verbs in a logical order?
No, but I like that the video identified that.
Yeah, and what it does is it's the start of the pre-writing, right? It gets them to not only identify what they need to do, but then it starts getting them thinking about, well, what would I talk about first? And what makes logical sense second and third? So you're starting to get them to think about their organization of their writing as a part of identifying their all the what's needed to be included in the writing. So that's kind of a little bit of a twist to what you're doing.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. All right, and then Chantel, I think I don't know, Chantel, and you might need to help me with this one. I don't know if we're missing, because I'm not opening it up in actual Word. This is just a picture of Word. So I don't know if there are things that you did here that are not showing up, but maybe this is exactly what you did. But it looks like you went ahead and you did a digital account of the work, which is great. I think it's good to have kids do that as well. You've got your audience box, you've named the source, and then there's the only thing that was missing, and that could be, again, it's not coming through, is the circling of the verbs. Can you give us a little bit of insight into that, Chantel? What happened?
Yeah, I did it in a Word document, and I circled the verbs as comments. So if you're not viewing it as a Word file, then the circles are not going to appear.
Perfect. Okay, great. And so can I ask you then, since I have you, do you teach your students on your above prompt then, do you teach your students to circle anything? And if you do, what do you have them circle?
Well, typically I don't. I have them utilize the raft process, which is you identify your role as the writer, your audience, the format that you'll be writing in, and then the topic. So actually annotating the prompt itself is something that I typically don't teach them explicitly as far as it relates to marking the prompt.
I love the raft idea. Do you, after seeing the video, do you see value in it and how it could work with the raft approach?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, good. Good. Excellent. Where did you pick that up? Did you make that up, or did you pick that up from another training?
Yeah, another training.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Raft. Can you go over that for us one more time, just in case someone's interested, or type it in our chat?
I'll type it right now.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, perfect. Well, hopefully it was fairly easy for you guys to do this work, download it, and again, if you're not noticing it, I want to make it explicit. You're also getting a Google training right now. You're getting some experience in not only close reading, but also how to use Google and how cool it is to create, whether it's a presentation like this one, and have links off to folders and handouts, or having an agenda where you can link off to the same things, and it's all connected where students can pull down information and they can push up information. I just think it's a really powerful resource, and Google has done such an amazing job. You probably have heard of what's called Google School. They offer some tools that are not available that you can get on their normal free Google Suite, but I mean, I've been using basically Google Classroom for, well, probably for about 8 or 9 years. I was one of the original people using Google when they asked for people's Gmail when it was invite only. That's why I actually got my name, jonathan.lemaster@gmail.com. That's like unheard of these days. There's no way you can actually get your name. So I was able to get my name and all this. And I've been using the Google Classroom concept by integrating slides and spreadsheets and Google Docs all at once in order to capture information, disseminate information, give kids the opportunity to see, because my kids, I use a PowerPoint every day like this that you're looking at right now, and they can open it up on their phones or their iPads in class and they can follow along with me. They can preview what we're going to do for the day, and if they miss a day, they can go back and get all the information and all the links that that I went over in class. So it's really powerful, and it doesn't take much effort at all to build this presentation, to kind of like put it all together and bring the resources together. So I hope kind of as we go through this, and by the 8th session, you'll kind of see, oh wow, I can, if you're not doing it already, I can do this with my kids. I can use these types of strategies that Jonathan has come up with to get information out and to collect information, to get my kids working on collaborative projects, all within Google. So it's kind of like an extra bonus. We do offer a 21st century skills learning workshop that does focus a little bit on Google, but right now you're kind of getting a double training, if you will. So it's kind of fun. All right, so let's go ahead and go to our next slide, which is talking about reading for comprehension. So this is step 3. So this is step 3 in the reading process. Step 1 was about analyzing prompts and giving kids prompts and breaking those prompts down. Step 2 is about developing prior knowledge, getting students engaged in the topic, and now step 3 is going to be reading for comprehension. To be transparent, I don't always go through step 3. Sometimes I skip it and go right to step 4. But every time I do, I always think, man, I shouldn't have done that. I should have stuck with the process and gone to step 3 and then step 4, because my students are struggling. They're struggling to understand certain parts, and had I gone through a comprehension reading skill with them, they would do much better in the analysis, which is step 4. So today is all about reading for comprehension. And there's going to be some fun things I'm going to share with you, and there's going to be some great topics to explore, and I guarantee many of you are going to feel like, yes, I want to do that at the start of the year. That's something I want to start right away. It's something I want to use in my classroom. So reading for comprehension, what is the purpose of this? What's the idea behind it? Number one, we want to get our kids to just know what the text is about. We just want them to get a feel for what is the topic, what are some of the main ideas in it. We want them to know what type of reading this is, what type of genre, and then be able to explain what it is and how do they know. So how do you know that this is, say, an op-ed piece, or how do you know that this is a letter? How do you know that this is a short story versus a poem versus an epic poem versus whatever they're reading, a memoir? How do you know that? So getting them to talk about, well, based on what I'm reading in this text, this is how I know. These are the clues in the text that help me understand. What words are essential to the meaning or message of the text? What am I reading that I need to hang on to? What are some of the words that are critical to this? So, for example, if we go back to the prompt, some of the words that were important were cause, effect, problem, solution. So we know that we're going to be looking at a text that has some problems and some solutions and some causes, but those words are important. So while I'm reading, I want to be able to start identifying words that help me understand what this text is about. They could be the main nouns of the text, could be some of the opinion words that the author uses toward the topic, just kind of getting a feel for what is here in the text and what it might all mean. So our next slide is about combining these two things. So we'll go back to the achievement triangle. So I'll do that for us right now. This is slide 33. Come back to it. Remember the achievement triangle. This idea of challenging students and then increasing complexity, but always giving support. And one of the support pieces is collaboration. So instead of collaboration just being for getting them to talk and getting them to release some energy, we can have different purposes for collaboration, and one is support. So we can combine the reading comprehension with the support. And that's exactly what we're going to do with this upcoming skill, Read 1, Speak 2, Write 3. So collaborative work is a type of scaffold, right? I put 2 brains together, they get a little bit sharper. I put 3 brains together, they get even more strong. Put 4 brains together, you're either going to have a party or you're going to have a dynamic group. And the 4 brains or the 3 brains are always going to help each other fill in the blanks, make connections that they didn't have, share experiences that may not be shared by every individual in the classroom. And it's also an important part of the cycle of independence. And I don't expect you to memorize this stuff, so this is why it's all in slides. The cycle of independence, remember, was that release of responsibility. So I do, we do, they do, you do. So the they do is that collaborative piece in yellow. So the they do is when I want them to work in collaborative teams. Now I don't always have to wait for they do for the teams, of course. You can put kids in pairs for any reason that you want. But think about how collaboration can be used for scaffolding and support in the reading process. It can also be used to move towards the release of responsibility and independence. They can start doing the work on their own, right? So this is a really important part of the reading experience, the collaborative work. So during the reading for comprehension, I'm choosing to share with you, and I'm saying it that way because there's lots of choices that we can make here in this step. I'm choosing to share the Read 1, Speak 2, Write 3 with you because A, I know it's powerful, B, all teachers across school can use it, and C, this is a great way to support students' reading comprehension. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my next slide, which gives you a little bit of information about Read 1, Speak 2, Write 3. So as we know, it's a comprehension skill. And what it does is it asks students to read one portion of text. That's the Read 1. And that portion of text can be a paragraph. That portion of text can be a whole page. It can be a stanza in a poem. It can be a section in a textbook. The Speak 2 is in pairs. So they're going to speak in two students with one and then a pair, a partner. And then Write 3, you're going to write 3 ideas from your reading and your discussion. So what I love about this is it creates a very nice pace in your classroom. It's going to be silent for a certain amount of time. It's going to be noisy with kids talking for a certain amount of time. And then it's going to calm back down while students write. And they're exercising their reading, they're exercising their speaking, and they're exercising their writing skills all within one activity. So this is one of my favorites, and from my experience, science teachers really, specifically science teachers, really like this one. Science is tough to read through. There's a lot of questions that the students have. There's a lot of vocabulary they have to define. And reading a science textbook can be very dry and very boring. When you read 1, Speak 2, Write 3 while reading a textbook, the dynamic changes completely. Students are supported, the text is chunked into smaller pieces so they can digest it easier. They get a chance to talk to their neighbor about what they just read and the confusions that they have, and then they have a chance to really stand on their own 2 feet and now put it in their own words by the Write 3. So science teachers, I've learned, really, really enjoy using this in their classroom, specifically. So drilling deeper down, this next slide talks about the 1. So the 1 can mean 1 paragraph. It can mean 1 page. So if you want your students reading an entire page, which I don't recommend in the beginning, I think it's too much. 1 section that you've chunked. So you might take paragraphs 1, 2, and 3 and call that 1, and 4 and 5 and call that 2, and 6, 7, and 8 and call that 3. So depending on what your text is doing and what the text offers, you can chunk parts of the text, right? And then those chunks become your Read 1, and then then they speak about it and they write about it, and then we move to the next chunk, and that's your second Read 1. Okay, so we have a lot of control here. There's a lot of flexibility. Remember, we're a framework. We're not going to give you that text. So you choose what you're going to do with that. You choose how you're going to structure the read 1, speak 2, write 3. And then we recommend that you pace the entire experience with a skill timer that I showed you yesterday, and we're going to dive deeper into that today. So you're going to have better luck if you pace the read 1, if you pace the speak 2, and you pace the write 3. Here's what happens if you don't pace it. Students end at different times. Your fast readers want to talk right away. Your slower readers who are just fine at reading, it just takes them a little longer to read, are distracted by the talking. Then the students who now are ready to talk are distracting the students who are trying to write. Then you have the kids who just want to get it done, and they'll finish all the chunks. They'll finish everything in a matter of a couple of minutes. And you walk over and you say, hey, you know, I don't know, are you really done with that? Oh, yeah. And it's this kind of showmanship. So if you pace them through the experience, then everyone's on the same page. And it's just something I've learned to do. I think it's something that we should try. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to LiteracyTA. There's two ways you can follow me. You can watch the screen, or on the agenda, I've created a link to read 1, speak 2, write 3. So if you see that link in the section 3, right here, I've highlighted it. You guys can click on it directly, or you can follow the screen. Whatever you feel most comfortable doing is up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and go to read 1, speak 2, write 3. And just as our analyzing prompts, you can see all of the skills and the handouts in one place. And we've named them so that they make sense. So all these handouts make sense. So teaching the skill. What do I need to teach this skill? Assess and track growth. What are the tools that you have to help me assess student growth and assess their performance? How do I plan this skill? What sorts of things do I need to do in order to plan this skill? Practicing the skill in subjects. What do you guys offer in the sense of other subjects? Now, in this particular skill, we just have the skills translated in Spanish. If you just use the regular handouts, they can be used in any class. It doesn't matter. So we don't have like science specific. We're going to learn about that later today. But science specific or history specific, we don't have that because you don't need it here. It already is flexible enough. And then differentiating support. So textbook starters if they're reading textbooks, or verbs for says if you're working on your students using stronger verbs. Summary starters. So we have all of these tools that you can use to support their reading, support their writing, and support their speaking. Let's look at what the handout looks like. So the handout, or the guide, breaks it down. Read 1, speak 2, write 3. So I can enlarge this for my students on the screen and talk about what it is they're going to be doing. The images support what they're seeing on the screen and what they're hearing you say, that you're reading in independent, you're speaking 2, and then independently now you're writing 3. So this is something that you can use. We have teachers make these into posters. That's absolutely okay. You guys, those of you who have TA accounts, you guys can turn any of our handouts into classroom-sized posters to remind you and to remind your students about the process. I used to draw this on my whiteboard every year and for a couple of times during the year so they would get it. I would try to explain to them the difference between standing and sharing versus sitting down and sharing and what that looks like physically. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm not going to draw anymore. I'm just going to create a nice visual. And the visual can help my students understand what my expectations are. So if they're not going to write anything, I'm going to have them stand and share. But if they're going to read and write, I'm going to have them sit down and share. And I had to get this explicit just to kind of save myself the hassle of being frustrated when the kids aren't kind of interacting the way I want them to interact. So this helps, and I explain what the differences are. And then there's a step. So understand what we're doing, find a partner, discuss ideas with your partner, and then there's some tips and strategies. So this is what we call a diagram. So I'm looking at Jennifer's question, and I think we're going to get to it in just a minute, which is a great question, and that is, do you have any recommendations for controlling pacing? What sorts of tools or what strategies or approaches do you have? So I'm going to try to answer that as we go through these resources, and if I don't successfully answer it, we can have a discussion. So let's jump in. Oh, one more thing before we jump in. If you want more structure for the Write 3, you can open up this activity and look at what this does. This now allows me to write down what paragraph or page they're working on, and then it gives me a space for them to write their summary sentences. This can be printed out and glued into a notebook. This can be printed out, written on, and turned in. Or you can teach your students to fold their paper, title the 2 columns, reference, and your summary sentence, and that's it. And then there's some support questions at the top. What is this section about? What information is essential? What is most important, right? So you can add additional structure to this activity if you want. One thing that we're good at LiteracyTA is scaffolding, so the support pieces, and structure. We're very good at structure. We have lots of different ways that you can support your kids to make sure they get it done, to make sure that they're doing it correctly and doing it at the level of expectation that you've set for your kids. All right, so I'm going to jump into the lesson. Remember, if you click on this interactive lesson, or if you click on the boomerang here down below, it will transform your lesson into a classroom presentation. See that? Instantly, I now have slides that I can use to teach. Let's say this is brand new to them. It says new to the skill. I can ask them, predict, how do you think we're going to use this skill when it says read 1, speak 2, write 3? What do you think? And then they're going to say, well, I think you're going to have us read, write, and speak. Okay, great. How do you think that's going to happen? What is that going to look like? And just get them primed on what it might be. If this is their second or third time, you can move over to experience with the skill. Guys, what was the strategy? How did we use this? What was the expectation that I had for you? Which takes us to our next slide. So here's our instructions, right? Read a portion of your text, discuss the text with your partner, write 3 main ideas or supporting details. Here are my expectations. Silently read the passage of text. Discuss each passage for 30 seconds or more. Record the main ideas in your text in your notes. Now, notice the power of this. I haven't talked about this too much, but your students will have access to this as well. So on your computers, if you're a one-to-one BYOD, or if you've got a computer at each station in your classroom, they can follow along with you. So let's say you're right here on Read 1, Speak 2, Write 3 Expectations. They can go back while you're talking and look at something else. So they will have the access to all of these skills that you're using in the classroom. So they can continue to rehearse at home. They can continue to support themselves in class or outside. This is a really powerful tool. They can open up handouts. They can open up diagrams, rubrics. They can open up anything that you're teaching them, which is very powerful. And I can talk later in our later sessions about how we give them access. So let's say you want to support them in their summary writing. You can say, all right, guys, when you write your summaries, you could tell them you can write in bullets, in incomplete sentences, that's fine. Or you can be more strict and say, I want you guys to use some of these formal language stems when writing your 3 ideas. And immediately it changes the whole feel of the activity. And you've raised the level of rigor by expecting them to write in these types of academic frames, right? And so you have them here. Now in my classroom they can see all 7, but because I'm working on a very small screen, you're only going to see a few of, you're going to see some of them. I guess I can get all 7 here. But presenting from your classroom screen, you'll be able to see all 7, which is great. So all your kids can make choices from there. So let's go to Jennifer's question. Here's how I pace it. Let's say we are here with the instructions, read 1, speak 2, write 3. What I do is I open up my timer, and based on my knowledge of student reading speeds in my classroom, I'm going to say, you guys have 2 minutes to read 1. You have 2 paragraphs to read. After the 2 minutes, I'm going to give you a chance to speak. Please don't talk until the 2 minutes are up and I let you know it's time to speak. The time starts now. All I'm asking you to do is read the 2 paragraphs, paragraph 5 and paragraph 6. Go ahead and begin. And they, heads down, and they start reading. When the 2 minutes are up, I bring it down to a minute, maybe even 30 seconds, and I say, you now have 30 seconds to speak with your partner about what you read. What are the most important ideas? What's the main idea of these 2 paragraphs? Do they support something that's already been said? Do they add to your knowledge of what's happening in the text, what's being discussed? Are there claims here? All is okay. 30 seconds, turn to your neighbor, go ahead and talk about what you just read. And they have this conversation, 30 seconds, da-da-da-da, and then I stop, and I say, all right, now's your time to write 3 main ideas. It's going to go pretty quickly, guys. You only have 1 minute, so make sure you get it down. So you have 1 minute to write your 3 ideas. Go ahead and go. These ideas should come from your discussion and what you read. Go. When they're done, I stop them and say, let's move to the second or whatever, the 3rd chunk or the 4th chunk. I'm going to give you, this time the paragraphs are a little bit smaller. So I'm going to give you 1 minute and 15 to read these. I think you can get it done in that amount of time. I'll always give you more time if I feel like you need it. But if not, we're going to go ahead and just start with 1:15, see if we can get it done. I need you to read paragraphs 9 and paragraphs 10. And let's throw in paragraph 11 because it's only 1 sentence. So 9 through 11, begin. And you just have this conversation with them. And when they're done, they know the material, they've had a chance to read, they've had a chance to talk, they've had a chance to write, they have ideas that you can call on, and so you can do this, collaborate tool, timer. You guys did such a great job today. I just want to hear some of the things that you guys said. So, here are your numbers, and I'm going to pick random students, and I want to know what did you do, what did you say for paragraph 1? I'd like to know something, and you, just to kind of make this more interesting, I'm going to have you stand up if you're called on, and you're just going to read what you wrote about paragraph 1. So here we go. It's completely random. I have no idea who's going to be called. Let's see who my first victim is. And you choose 31, and the kids love this. They will absolutely love this. So 31, it's like, just give me one idea. Okay, great, thank you. How about 19? Okay, let's see if I can shoot across the room. Let's see, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. Oh, right in the middle, 28. Please stand and share. See what I'm doing? Now I'm making it interactive. It's fun. They don't know where the number's going to land. These numbers are just their seats in the classroom. So if you see where it says front on this diagram here, front is the front of the classroom. This is my first row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's my first row in the classroom. And then all the way back. Now, I'm going to kind of help you out here. If this is what your classroom looks like, where they're already grouped in 4s, it's still the same. So number 5, it's going to be confusing, so bear with me, because I just mixed everyone. But number 5, the position number 5, that's desk 1, right? Position number 28 is desk 2. Position number 11 is desk 3. So when I go back to my assigning, just imagine that these numbers, just fuse them together, and those are your tables. Some of you have groups of 6 in your classroom, right? And this is what it looks like. So just imagine 1, 2, 7, 8, 13, and 14 are one. They're your group of 6, but they still have individual numbers in that group. So just because if you don't have these kind of rows set up in your room, you can still assign numbers. I hope this is making sense. You can still assign numbers. They don't have to be in separate chairs in order for you to assign numbers. So Jennifer, what do you think? Did that answer? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Do you see a practical way?
Yes. I think that will work. You had addressed earlier students who, want to move through, and this last year I had several gifted students that were mixed with classes that were really quite slow, and I had to make some adjustments. But this is a really good idea on how to, better control that. But it still seems like with those gifted students, it would still kind of uh, move them along the pace of the students who are slower. So I have to figure something out still for them.
Yeah. So, and anyone in the group, you can, you know, chime in and give us some ideas of what we might do. You can chat about it in the Google Hangout, or you can unmute your mic and talk. But I don't do this, but I know you can. You could definitely separate your students in your classroom, and you can say, this group of students, you guys, here's a couple iPads. You're going to pace your own, but I'm going to have you work, maybe in a corner or in the hallway, so you're not distracting the other students.
Right.
And you're going to run through this pacing, but your pacing is going to be a little bit different. But I still want you guys to follow this kind of quiet time, noisy time, quiet time process, and because they'll cut corners. I've learned that the students will they'll do read one, speak two, write three all at the same time. They just
Right.
you know what I mean? They're just kind of going through it, and that's not really the idea behind the activity. So you could split up your students if you wanted to. You could assign a gate student to one of the groups so that some of their time is spent managing and facilitating, and that would keep them kind of busy instead of you managing and facilitating. That's another option. You can change the chunks of text, so you can keep them all in the room, but you can say Group A, Group B. Group A, you guys are going to be reading paragraphs 1 and 2. Group B, you're going to be reading paragraphs 1 through 4. Go ahead and start. You guys have a minute and a half. They're reading 1 through 4. The other kids are reading 1 through 2. And that way you're not separating them in the class,
Right.
but you're still
Right.
pacing them. You're just giving them more to do.
Makes sense.
Yeah, some options. Are there things
Okay.
that you guys in the group think about that you've done that work, or something that can help Jennifer out when we've got that kind of mixed class?
I typically like to separate my gifted kids and let them work at their own pace.
Okay, so that's Morgan, and so how do you physically separate them? Are there certain strategies you use?
I like to allow them to research based on whatever we're learning. I'll have them to research something independently, and then they'll have their part of the assignment perhaps could be to come back and to present to the group.
Oh, okay. Would you have them go through a comprehension reading skill like this?
I would have them perhaps to go through it, but I wouldn't spend as much time with them because a lot of them already have the comprehension skills.
Okay. Okay.
Right, and I would agree. Usually they do.
Okay. Good. How do
But I
you?
do think it's still worth them going through it at least, so they know what's what, how to do this, how to perform this on their own.
Right.
So when they do get to that difficult text, they can kind of break it down. But absolutely, okay, thanks, I'm got it.
Okay. And let me just share an experience with you. This is I'm going on my I'm getting to those numbers now. I think my 14th year of teaching might be my 13th. Yeah, I think it's my 14th. I spent 11 years in high school and just finished my second year as a middle school teacher. And I moved from a low socioeconomic high school, 96% free reduced lunch. 1,000 of our 2,200 students were EL identified. 600 of those were ESL, ELD, which means that they're just learning English for the first time or have 1 year experience. So it was a school that demanded a lot from teachers, and you needed to be a great teacher in order to teach there if you were going to be effective. And students needed lots of support and scaffolds. I moved to a middle school to better understand what middle school teachers go through and to know what that younger age group struggles with. And not only did I move from a low socioeconomic school, high school, to a middle school, I moved to an affluent middle school. So we're talking about, the kids have well, there's hardly any free and reduced lunch. And the kids are at probably 150,000 to 200,000 mean income. This is a completely different experience. So I went in expecting these students to have lots of skills. They were all GATE identified. I have full GATE classes, like every single child is GATE. And I expected them to be able to do some of the academic work that I would expect from a kid like that. You look at a piece of paper and you say, wow, this kid's probably got all the skills that they need. So I ran a few tests with them, testing their ability to read and comprehend. And I was floored to find out, my very first year working there, that my assumptions that they can comprehend were not validated. They can comprehend some basics, but when I started quizzing them through summary writing, they didn't have a good grasp on what the text was about. And I also found that students at that level could read so quickly that they missed many of the important ideas or the nuances of a text, where authors hedge a little bit and split hairs and they do these little things and then they read over it because they just got the big words, the nuts and bolts. And I also realized that they read with bias. So when they summarized an idea, for example, like wearing school uniforms, that was one of my tests. We read an article about school uniforms, which you guys could use. It's on LiteracyTA, and now you have access to it. It's a lesson and a lesson planner. What they did was they took that, and the article is about why uniforms are important, because they help with identity. When you strip away all the labels and you are all the same outwardly, then your identity can actually be seen. They wrote summaries about how school uniforms ruin your identity, stifle who you are. And I'm going, did you guys even read this article? And it was surprising to me that they didn't have the comprehension skills I thought they had. They could tell me it was about school uniforms. They could tell me that the author wore school uniforms. They could tell me, but when it came down to what is her argument, they didn't do very well. So I have kind of learned a lot. It's been thrown back in my face. I've had to learn that some of these students that are perceived as having all these skills, they're bright, don't get me wrong. They're extremely bright, but they lack some skills. If you start digging around and you start assessing every little part of the process, they lack some academic skills that I never would have thought they were missing. So just a little bit, and so then you could assess them. Of course, I think the rubric here is going to be a pair rubric. It's not going to actually assess their summary skills, but we have that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do an activity. Let's go back to our agenda. I'm going to share my screen with you. So you're going to have some time to explore. What you're going to do is you're going to go into our section in the skill library where we have all of our comprehension reading skills. So read one, speak two, write three is one of our comprehension reading skills. You're going to follow this link and in the agenda for session 3, and it's going to take you to a page where you will see comprehension reading skills, and you're going to see 8 of them. I want you to open them up, take a look at each one, and decide on one that you think you would like to use in your classes. For whatever reason, you're going to be able to explain why. So visual summary, which I absolutely love. Summarizing main ideas, this is more nuts and bolts. Read one, speak two, write three, we just did. Making inferences, pausing and predicting. scan for vocab, context clues, and then writing in the margins. So I'd like you guys to explore these. And from the agenda, there's going to be another start link. I hope you're getting in a routine now. Notice that everything I do is going to be predictable. You know that there's going to be a discussion. You know there's going to be a little activity. So I'm going to go ahead and start. When I press start, it's going to take me to our activity page. And just as we did yesterday, you're going to type in your name, you're going to type in your email, and then give it a color. I'm doing this because this is one way I'm taking roll. So that's one of the ways that I've talked to Alicia, and she feels comfortable about taking roll this way. So we're going to take roll and then put in our email, and I believe this is how you guys are being compensated for taking this training. So give yourself a color, and then on the second page, there's instructions. Of the 8 skills, I'd like you to narrow it to your 8. Don't choose ones that you're already doing. I want you to choose ones that are listed here in LiteracyTA. You're going to type in the skills. So let's say it's writing in the margins, as an example. I want you to explain or reflect on how this skill would help your kids or why you would use it. Like, why would you want your kids to write in the margins as a step 3 process in the reading process? And then what standard does it support? So based on your decision, based on your explanation, how might it address one of the standards that you're working on with your kids? All right? I'm going to be here to answer any questions. I'm just going to mute my microphone, and I'm going to leave this screen up. So I have the instructions at the top of this activity. You're going to identify a skill, you're going to explain it, and you're going to copy and paste a state standard that supports the work. The skills that you're looking at can be found in the agenda, and they're linked. So it says comprehension reading skills right here in the first column. You're going to click on that, and it's going to take you to this page. To look deeper, you're going to click on one of the skills. You can read about it. You can open things up. You can look at the slides, and then go to the next one. And I want you to try to choose one and then write about it on this page here. Okay? Good luck. Have fun. I'll check in with you in about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Looks like we're going to be finished in about 2 minutes, so let's go ahead and take those 2 minutes, finish up. I think you guys can see my comments, and you guys are more than welcome to respond to them if you feel the need to. They're just another way that I can communicate with you, and you can communicate with me. So I'm just dropping in comments, and I think if you click on it, you can either reply or you can drop in your own if you want to. Okay, this is most impressive. You guys are doing an excellent job seeing the connection between the skills, the purpose of those skills, how they might help students, and then the standard alignment. I think the standard alignment is really important so that we're affirming that what we're doing and wanting to do with our kids does move us forward with the standards and aligns to what our expectations are as teachers. And it also helps clarify the work that we're doing to make sure that it is all based on moving kids towards college and career readiness. So this is great. Your explanations are right on. The standards you guys hit perfectly. So that kind of inspired me to show you something maybe a little early, but I think it's important to do that. This work that you're doing is terrific. And I'm going to show you something that I think is going to help a little bit and show that some of this work has been done for you already. So if you follow along on the screen with me or go back to the agenda and click on this last piece that I just added in section 3 or session 3, I said let's take a look at LiteracyTA standards section. If you click on this section, it's going to take you over to Common Core, and you know, obviously you guys are using Common Core standards, but we're going to be updating this page to say state standards. And we're working to give each of the states their own independent individual look at their own standards. But right now we're using the Common Core College and Career Readiness Anchor Standards. So if I click on reading, watch how cool this is. When I click on reading and I scroll down, here's my R1, right? and then we've taken the skills in the skill library and we've matched them to the standard R1. And then R2, we've done the same thing all the way to R9. So we've taken the standards we've taken our skills and we've said, if you do these skills, you will be doing this standard. So it's a different way of looking at our skill library, but it's an awesome, awesome page and resource for you guys as you go through your planning and as you work with other teachers. This portion of it is free without the TA, so all of your teachers can look at this, but as soon as they try to click on a handout or something, they'll be blocked if they don't actually have the teacher assistant.
What did you go to, Jonathan? I'm sorry, to get to that Common Core, this piece here?
Yeah, sure. There's two ways of doing it. On LiteracyTA, you can click on Common Core at the top, or on the agenda, I put a link at the bottom of this session 3. I put a link, and it just says in the middle column called Activity, and it just says Standards section. And if you click on that, it will take you to the Common Core section. So you can start to see how the support that we have for these standards are here, and then it gives you the option to do some different things with your kids instead of doing the same activity over and over again. We believe in changing it up as long as it's always working toward the same goal. So when you look at R2, what's funny about R2 is that even though it's a reading standard, there's a lot of writing involved. See this? Summarize the key supporting details. So remember we talked about read 1, speak 2, write 3? This is a perfect skill for R2. And we talked about visual summary, and here it is. Because I'm writing about the key ideas, and I'm drawing the key ideas, writing in the margins. Expanding summary, this is the one that I use to test my students, and boy did they not do a good job. I love this one, expanding summary. A lot of fun. They basically draw a picture of the main idea. They write a bumper sticker of the main idea in 8 words. Then they write a 25-word statement of the main idea, and then they write a 100-word explanation with details of the main idea. And it tells you very quickly if they're understanding the reading or not. So a variation then, for some of you, like maybe you want to have part of your students read 1, speak 2, write 3, and maybe have your GATE students just jump to an expanded summary. That will tell you right away if they can do this work. If you want them to just bypass the structure and go right into read it and now write this or complete this expanding summary activity, it will tell you very quickly if they have the comprehension skills or not. It's going to be interesting. But this is the one I use as a test. I test them this way. And it lets you know a lot of things. Lets you know, can they hone in on the main idea? Is it without bias? Can they really boil it down to 8 words? And then when they start writing in more summary, like 25 words and 100 words, do they know how to write about details?
Wait, put your core. What?
Was there a question or no?
These are tight.
Okay, maybe not. No problem. All right, so let's go to our homework assignment. Hopefully these are not. Hopefully you're liking this and it's not too much work for you. I'm trying to keep it at a minimum, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the most. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go to close reading agenda, and it's over here on the right. It says begin writing a lesson with LiteracyTA's skill-based lesson planning template. Now we've only done the first 3 steps, step 1, 2, and 3, analyzing prompts. Step 2 is building background knowledge, and then step 3 is a comprehension reading skill. And I hope that you're seeing how we're building up towards this. So what I want to do is start the lesson. I want you guys to start planning a lesson, a real lesson, a lesson that you would use, a lesson that you would actually try in your classroom. Toward the end of this 8-session workshop, you guys are going to use our digital lesson planner, and you're going to actually build one inside of our planner. So I'm really excited about that. I think that's going to be terrific. So I want to do some, as I said, we support well, so I'm going to get you guys a little bit of support. You can follow along by clicking the link, or you can watch the screen. So I'm in the agenda, and I'm launching to the assignment. So here is what the skill-based lesson planning template looks like. We define the different moves for you, so you can read through this if you wish, but really what I want you to get to is this handout at the bottom. So this is the handout, and if you open it, you're going to see a planning template. Lesson plan name, so you can print this out and start writing it. In this lesson, students will, so what's the objective? Content area, what is your content area? What is your grade level? Type of source that you're going to be using, poem, article, part of a novel, title of your source, author of your source. Step 3, what is your prompt? Now you have an option. If you want to print this out and handwrite it, you can, or you can recreate the content in a Google Doc. It's fine, because you're going to be sharing that with us. So that's okay if you want to do that, recreate a Google Doc. Or you can print this out, handwrite it, take a picture of it, and upload it. It's entirely up to you. Some of you really like to handwrite and get that down and go through that process, and I think that's absolutely fine. So you're going to have this first page complete. Let me just add that, because I don't know if I put this in my notes. Yeah, so let me do complete first page so far. Okay, so then let's look at the guide again. Then what are the couple standards that you would like to address in this lesson? We like to limit to 3 focus standards, because we know if you start going over that, you probably won't get to them in your lesson. Even if 1, we're okay with 1. It doesn't have to be 3. So if you want to do 1 standard for this lesson, great, do it. Then literacy skills. So we've only done the comprehension so far. So don't worry about summary and analysis. We're not doing that yet. So you can choose read 1, speak 2, write 3, or visual summary, or you may choose the one that you selected today and wrote about today. So you can just check one of these. Or just write it in. If you're recreating this, you can write in what the skill you're going to be using. And then we're going to pause. So I want you to do pages 1 and 2 of this. So complete the first and second page. Isn't this nice? You guys can actually see these updates immediately, and I'm supporting you through that, and you can hear me talking about it, and now it's like, okay, good, he's writing it down for me, and now I understand what's going on. So you're going to go to this, begin writing a lesson, LiteracyTA's, that includes, go to the page, go to the above page, and scroll to the bottom, and open the document. You can write on the document or recreate it in Google Docs.
And Jonathan, you said we can get right directly to this document. I mean, actually type on it, right, in Google Docs.
You can't type on this particular document, but you can upload it into like Goodreader and handwrite over it. You can print it out, write it, and then scan it back in. You can recreate it by just giving the topics. You don't have to make it all orange and all pretty. You can just kind of write out the information if you want. Basically, this is going to be a planning guide that we're going to flip into a digital lesson at the end. So this is just kind of one step to it. Unfortunately, you can't actually write on our documents unless you pull them into another program like Goodreader. And then I'm going to have you guys link to, where did I put the, oh, I think I did the folder presentation, didn't I? Oh, no, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to have a folder, link to, or upload your Okay, and I will make that folder, and I will make a link right here to that folder so that you guys can do that. And I'll make that as soon as we're off air. Okay, whew. It's you know, I like this format. I hope that you guys are liking it because it's small pieces. It's, you know, you can see how overwhelming this can be. So this is small pieces, trying to break it down into manageable chunks. Yes, I think is it Ada? Is that right? You do not have a TA yet, so what you need to do is in the Google chat, can you type your full name? Oh, actually, I have it. I have it in the sign-in. So I will set you up with the TA, and you'll get a welcome email from me, and then you will follow those steps to create a new password. You'll have access, and then when you go to open it, it will work. So right now, don't create an account. Don't do any of that. Just I'll take care of it. Check your email in about 20 minutes. There'll be a welcome email there, and then you can follow the instructions. Then you'll have permission to open up anything that you want. And if you could just type in, let me know that you understood that. That way I know that you and I are connecting. Okay, so yeah, the small chunks I think are good, and we're building and we're learning as we go. And I'm inspired by you guys. You guys are doing excellent work. Obviously, strong educators and knowledgeable about your standards, so that's really good. So again, pleasure working with you. If you go back to the agenda, you can see when our next session is. We are meeting again on July 7th. July 7th is our next, so I want you guys to have a wonderful holiday weekend. Enjoy family, enjoy friends, and I will see you guys back next week. So thank you for all your hard work, and you can always email me too if you have any questions about anything or something's not going right, and I'll try to help you work through it. So thank you guys for another wonderful day, a wonderful morning, and we'll meet after the holiday weekend. So thank you. Take care, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.